Hi guys, it's James back with another video, and I had been wanting for a long time to do another one of the spotlight videos where I just focus on one single movie, but I didn't have a particular movie in mind until I picked up, well, if you read the title, you know this is about The Last Broadcast. And I had picked up the special edition Blu-ray. I think it was put out by 101 Films, 101 Studios. I believe it's a British company. And I talked about it on the Madhouse for our favorite, I think it was our favorite like special editions or something episode. And I had seen this movie in passing way back in the late 90s when I was in college, and I would go to and from Toronto. And usually on the Friday when I would go home, I'd go take the subway and I'd go up on Yonge Street and go to like HMV and Sam the Record Man. And in HMV, I would do this on the day I came back too, if I had time. And I remember seeing this VHS, special edition VHS, well, just VHS in HMV, and it seemed interesting, sounded interesting. And I watched it, and I thought it was pretty good for the time. And it wasn't until decades later when I revisited it, picked it up again. The special edition sounded like it had some really good stuff, and I watched the documentary. But I hadn't revisited I hadn't watched the movie for a second time since the late 90s. So I figured this would be perfect, because I don't think it's talked about hardly at all anymore. And I figured this would be perfect for my Hidden Gems spotlight segments. Excuse me. Which I realized I hadn't done one in over 2 years. And so I watched it again recently, and it was a lot better than I remembered. So, perfect fit. Anyway, let me throw this up now. Spoilers. Excuse me. Because I'm not going to get into spoilers until the end. I'm going to go in order. But just in case you want to stop and watch the movie, you can listen to most of this. But I'm just right up the outset. I'm gonna spoil it. Okay, so this movie is from 1998, and it was around the same time as the Blair Witch Project. It was one of those found footage movies that was purported to be portray real events, which everyone knows Blair Witch was not based on anything real, but they made it out to be as a marketing ploy, part of their marketing campaign. Well, Last Broadcast did the same thing, where you had the actors playing characters where they had the same first name as their character. And in this case, it was Lance Wheeler and Stephen Avalos. And Stephen Avalos played Stephen Avcast, and Lance Wheeler played Locust Wheeler. And it's similar to in Blair Witch, where they just had the first names. Anyway, a lot of people liken this one to Blair Witch, or consider it like a rip-off or whatever. But it was actually released. Blair Witch, they say, was conceived back in 93 and then written in 97, but released in 99. Last Broadcast was released in 98. So they were roughly around the same time, but this one was released before Blair Witch. And it's considered, as some of the little factoids I have, it was the first film that was filmed, edited, and screened entirely digitally. First film to ever do that. It was shot for about $900. And while you watch it now, it looks like a product of its time, being on like high def video and stuff. But it looks a lot better than something you'd think was shot for $900. similar to what's the film Primer, the indie low budget time travel movie that was made for about $7,000 that won Sundance. Not comparing this to that, just because of the low budget. Yeah, shot for $900, and it made about little over 12,000 US profit. So it was a very profitable indie film. Anyway, this film, it found footage. Basically, there's a guy, David Lee, known as the filmmaker, because he's making a documentary about the Pine Barrens killings, the Jersey Devil killings. The Lance and Stephen, portraying Stephen and Locus, were the hosts of Fact or Fiction, a sort of like a cable access call-in show, and they had this message board that would read off questions that viewers put in, and one of them said, "Would you investigate the Jersey Devil?" And so they went to the Pine Barrens and grabbed a camera crew. They had a rumored psychic named Jim Seward with them, and they went out into the Pine Barrens and were subsequently murdered, killed, ripped apart, massacred by something. Some think the Jersey Devil. The only survivor was Jim Seward, who came out of the woods and was promptly arrested and tried and convicted and sent to prison for these killings. And while he was in prison, he subsequently died under mysterious circumstances. So even though there was no chance for him to be released because he was wrongly imprisoned. Anyway, David Lee starts documenting this process, talking about Stephen and Locus, Jim Seward, the other crew that were involved, and how the expedition came about. And so he narrates a lot of the film. You only see him a few times until the end, and it's about how the show came about, how the expedition came about, and everything that went into it, and then the circumstances surrounding the crew dying, and then Jim Seward dying. And then at some point, David Lee receives some mysterious footage, a tape that's footage that went missing from the expedition, and he hires an editor to reconstruct it. And the editor puts things together and realizes that she's found footage that proves that Jim Seward could not have performed these killings. He was somewhere else at the time. And there's a shot which catches a blurry image that's possibly the killer on the tape. So she's reconstructing this footage, and then the camera cuts to a third-person view, and it's David Lee filming the editor as she reconstructs the image, which reveals that it is Lee who killed all these people and framed Jim Seward. It's sort of assumed that he's trying to prove that Jim Seward could not have done these killings, but he's making a documentary at the time, and she discovers that it was Lee who did these killings. So he immediately kills the editor, suffocates her with a plastic sheet, loads her body up into his car, drives out to the Pine Barrens, dumps her on the ground, and continues to film himself as part of the documentary. So it's hard to say what his reasoning, what his motive was for this, other than, being a psychopath. but it really doesn't benefit or hurt anyone to reveal that Jim Seward was innocent because he's already dead. It's an interesting film, and there's a thing during the credits, like after at the end of the credits, the typical disclaimer of this film is a work of fiction. Everyone involved was no one involved was based on anything. Oh, what is it? I've always found it to be one of the best disclaimers I've read. And I want to get it right. Because I always remember it wrong. And it's like, the story and characters depicted in this movie are entirely fictitious, but please don't tell anyone. That has stuck with me ever since I watched it back in 1998, 1999, whenever I picked up the VHS. It's just like, but please don't tell anyone. We want to make this seem as real as possible. And I thought everyone in the movie did a good job. Stefan and Lance Wheeler did a great job, and they also wrote and directed this. I don't know if I mentioned that. They were the leads as the Fact or Fiction host, but they were also the filmmakers. And David Lee did a good job as the narrator, and I guess ultimately the antagonist. And then you had other supporting crew and characters, which seemed like it was a lot of non-actors. But then again, the movie had an almost non-existent budget, so you get your friends and people you can get to be in the movie. If you happen to find the Blu-ray, I found it at, I believe it was Cinema One in Devonshire Mall in Windsor. And it's got a great retrospective documentary with Lance and Steven, and I can't remember who else was in the documentary. It's got a couple of commentaries on there which I haven't listened to. It has a booklet inside, and it's a beautiful case. And I will put up shots that I found online of the packaging, which is really impressive. Yeah, I think that's about it. And I would recommend this film. Like I said, if you can find it, it's online, but it's also on physical media. And yeah, I think that's about it. Because it's a short movie. There's not a lot to it, and it deals with just one brief event and the events surrounding it. And okay, I'm just blabbing on now. So, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you on the next one. And toodles.